quite recently, in February of this year, my book 50 Life Lessons was released, and it did fairly well, among the readers. So what I'm really going to be doing is sharing a few of the key lessons that I've learned from my life and which I mentioned in the book 50 Life Lessons. So I'll start actually with the first lesson, which is true happiness lies in the happiness of the other. Now, before I actually plunge into it, I'm going to have to tell you a little bit about my spiritual awakening, because it's intimately linked with this first lesson. It's the lesson I learned through the spiritual awakening. So here goes. When I was 33, I was a lost, confused, and unhappy soul. For the last 16 years, I had been immersed in a low-grade depression, which left me clueless as to how to live or why to live. In fact, I would have very happily, I was courting death, but too afraid to actually take this final step, because death frightened me. But at the same time, life, I simply I did not understand life, and I did not want to live life. That was my state when I had this spiritual awakening. And how it happened actually was through the one and only romantic relationship I ever got involved with. I was very unskilled at relationships because, as I say, I was very unskilled at living. And eventually my friend, said that he would like to call it a day. And he did it with a lot of dignity. And that enabled me to understand one vital lesson, which is that vital message, which is that he said, "You have not made me happy." Now, I had been miserable for so long that the last 6 months or so, I had started, inquiring deeply into what happiness was, what did it mean, how does one get it, and all that. So so when this friend, used that word happiness, it sort of triggered a bell in me. And the next morning, I woke up with a very strong determination, literally soldered in my soul. And, I was a will o' the wisp. I was not known for taking these adamantine decisions, but this one seemed like I would do anything to make it happen. So I decided to do just that. I didn't know what happiness was, but I said, let me try and make this person happy, because it was still in my space. And the first few days were really very difficult, because this friend was, no longer. So we'll just call him a person, if you don't mind. This person was being very difficult. He was flirting with women. He was being nasty, and so on and so forth. So as I struggled with grief and jealousy and anger and frustration and rage, I kept asking myself, how on earth am I going to make this person happy if I'm going to be, so caught up in these negative emotions? So I struggled. I sort of, I stayed with that question for 4 or 5 days. And then on the 5th day, I had an amazing, what shall I say, a moment when I suddenly realized that if I truly wanted this person's happiness, as I kept repeating to myself that I did, then why would it matter to me what he did? No matter what he did, I wanted his happiness. Could I not just allow him to be who he was? Could I not allow him to, do what he was doing, say what he was saying, be what he was being? Because if I truly wanted someone's happiness, I should be able to accept them unconditionally. And that was a very novel thought for me, And the minute I thought that, my entire negative charge just settled down, and I became absolutely and completely peaceful. It was a seminal moment in my life. I didn't understand it, though I was, enormously impacted by it. And later on, as I moved on to the path, I realized that in that moment of truly wanting another person's happiness over mine, I had somehow flipped my ego. And, and I started doing this now religiously. I used to make a little mantra out of it. I would, do this with my hand, which later I realized was some kind of a mudra. So I used to do this, and then I would say, it's the other person's happiness that matters and not mine. And I would simply flip out of my ego and land up somewhere between me and the other person, where what I wanted or what I thought or my opinions or my perspectives did not matter any more than they did. I gave it the same weightage. I was simply not. Influenced by my physical, mental, emotional, psychological needs. It didn't matter to me. So I could arbitrate with tremendous objectivity. And that's it, set the stage for the next one enchanted year, when I found it was so easy for me to just do this, do this, say it's the other person's happiness, and I would just flip the ego, and I would be in a state where I was completely focused on the other person's happiness. And it didn't take me long to realize, I think about in a month, I realized that the more I was focusing on other people's happiness, the happier I was getting. And, that's when I think I really understood that the design of life is meant to be for us to get happiness through the other's happiness. Happiness is not, it's not a direct route. It is an indirect, deflected route through the happiness of the other. And when I understood that, I also understood that if that was really the case, then we were interconnected. If I can only get my happiness through you, then I'm not separated from you. If I was separated from you, as science told us at that point, not so much now, but you must remember I had this awakening sometime in 1991. And at that point, science was very firmly of the opinion that we lived in a fragmented, separatist universe, and nothing was connected with anything else. So I realized that that's not so. If I can only get my happiness through you, then there is some connection between us, however, whether I understood it or not. And that actually, led me in time to this concept of oneness, which is so central to, Vedanta and Hindu philosophy. So bit by bit, I began to feel that the jigsaw puzzle of life itself was fitting for me, And yes, most important, I realized if there was a designer, then if there was a design, then there was a designer. Now, I had been an atheist from the age of 14. So to return to God was a very precious moment, because I realized that I was a bhakta. I really deeply loved God, and to have been deprived of God for so many years was very painful for me. So I think one of the most beautiful parts of that awakening was that I was now able to return to God in a way that made sense to me. I understood then that there is someone or something or a force that govern this universe, that has created this law whereby all of us are part of this one thing and designed to draw happiness from each other. So that was for me a marvelous experience, and whatever lessons I've learned and whatever lessons I've written about and shared, many of them come from this one central experience and the understanding I derived from it. Of course, later on, as I moved on, I realized that that this focusing on the other person's happiness was a kind of a portal for me to enter into enlightenment. But it's not the only one. There's so many other portals that all of us go, like that so many gurus and teachers have been teaching us, and being in the present moment is obviously, one of the most central ones. Or inquiring, self-inquiry, who are you? Looking into who are you? Or a selfless service, or karma yoga, or loving God unconditionally, or bhakti yoga. There are so many. There are millions of paths, and all of them will eventually lead us to enlightenment. But wherever we go, however we access it, the fact remains that when you are when you flip your ego, you are bound to focus on the other's happiness, because it no longer matters to you. Your happiness no longer matters to you. You only want, to serve the other. You only want the welfare of the universe. So, however we get them, my dear friends, this truth that happiness lies through the happiness of the others does remain entirely valid. Okay. So, after that, then I also realized and one last thing I realized was that if this is what it's all about, this is the design of life, then definitely the purpose of life has to be growth. Because I found that working on making others happy was very hard work. I had overcoming my ego was very hard work. It wasn't as easy later on as it was in that first, let's say, 7, 8 months, when I just had to do this and zoop, I would flip. But later it became more and more difficult. And so I found that it is difficult to, overcome the ego. It is difficult to focus on, on the other's welfare and allow the other person to hurt you if necessary, if it happens. Give the person the space to be who he is, no matter who he is. So all these things, and the more I was doing this, the more strong I was getting, and some way it hit me that the purpose of life itself is growth. Now, today we can also put it in a reverse way, which is purpose of life is to remove our deconditioning. It's not about growing, but it's really about ungrowing. It's about unlearning. It's about not identifying with the false self, which is the ego, and simply allowing the ego to leave us when the real self shines forth. So that's one more lesson I learned along the way. And yeah, so all of this, and yes, my own personal growth, personal purpose, I realized was, or I found I was committed to, because I'd been miserable for so long, was to make, to heal the world of its misery. That was just one line that came to me: heal the world of its misery. I don't know how I was going to do it. It's a blanket thing. But now when I look at it, I feel that whatever I did subsequently, particularly after I left Society magazine after 5 years and joined Life Positive magazine, everything I did subsequently, at least in my line of work, was focused on healing the world of its misery. In Life Positive, after I joined Life Positive, I determined I was going to write about nothing. Here is Ankur. Hi, Ankur. Great to see you. I was going to write about nothing except, the spiritual zone. I decided that my purpose in life was to highlight and tell people, that there's a different way of living, and to enable people to move in that direction, the direction of oneness, the direction of personal growth, the direction of becoming a better person every single day. So that's what I've been doing. I've been doing that. I did that in Life Positive for 21 years. After I left Life Positive, to start this workshop, this facilitating of my workshops. I honestly believe, and most of my participants agree with me, that the workshop is not really only about writing. It is very much about the writer. It's about enabling the writer to move into a space of, self-trust and confidence and even to write from that. So that's what I've been doing, and I hope to do this for the rest of my life. When I say this, I mean I hope to always be focusing on healing the world of its misery. I hope to always be, looking for ways and means of broadcasting the message that that there is a higher and better way to live, and that our job as human beings is to become that. So that's the first lesson. And I can tell you that, all these learnings over time has transformed me also remarkably, because I was in a pretty sorry state. I mean, 16 years of depression had left me a very, I would say, very fragmented. My mind was totally fragmented, and my memory was so bad, my focus was bad, my concentration was bad, my self-esteem was bad, my what shall I say, my self respect also was poor. Everything was not just poor. I almost felt there was zero. So I had so many faults, so many shortcomings holding me back. But because of these insights and because of working on myself, I steadily, grew. I cannot say I have actually attained enlightenment, is it? But yes, every day I'm moving closer to that, and that's good enough. So that's the first lesson. Now the second lesson, just have kept some notes ready. The second lesson is the next big insight I received, which is calling here the secret of self-esteem. In the book, it's just called Love Yourself. So after 1 year, I let that whole mantra and everything go. I just let it go, because I realized actually that it was becoming more and more difficult for me to get into that space. And I also realized that the reason why it was getting so difficult for me to get into that space was because my self-esteem was very low. My sense of faith in myself, my love for myself, my confidence in myself were all very, very low. And because of that, I would keep plunging into these negative states, which was very difficult for me to come out of, despite using that mantra. So at some point, I decided I'm going to let this mantra go, because this thing has to be a natural state. I have to be able to be in a state of focusing on the other's happiness without, doing this mantra business. I guess that's when I actually stepped on the spiritual path as a seeker. I didn't know any of this. Because I had such an inner awakening, I had no idea about spirituality. I was not, as I say, having been an atheist, I was not, not at all reading any books that had anything to do with religion. I saw myself as a philosopher, and I had no idea that there were these things called seekers, or there was spiritual movement, or there were gurus, nothing. It's really odd, living in India. Later on, I realized, my God, India is immersed with spirituality, but odd as it was, I had not a clue. And that's really true of most of us, if we're not attuned, we don't see. So I personally believe that even, if the truth were to come and slap me in my face, I still would not have seen it if I had not been ready for it. Later on, I was born a Christian, and when I went back to the Bible, I realized, oh my God, there were so many clues here. Why is it that I didn't see? I didn't see because I was not ready, So anyway, so I let it go. I let this whole mantra go. And I started deeply inquiring into the secrets of self-esteem. What is this thing called self-esteem? How do I access it? And one thing that happened to me, and this again is another beautiful thing, my dear friends, that when we are on the path, life supports us all the time. It sends supportive people, it sends supportive, information, whatever our next step is, somehow or the other, it works its way to us. So a friend manifested, who seemed to me to be the very epitome of that state of self-esteem. He was unflappable, unperturbed. He seemed to float in a sea of calm and peace. If he did anything, that when I say wrong, I mean, if he forgot something or whatever, it didn't perturb him. It would have perturbed me. I was forever sitting and biting my nails about all the things I'd done wrong. It didn't perturb him. He was quite peaceful. I was fascinated. I kept studying this person. I said, my goodness, this is what I want to be. I want to be this imperturbable, sea of peace. And I studied this person for about 4 months. And then at the end of it, I suddenly had a kind of, I don't know what you can call it, an insight or a deep connection, a deep sense of what the real, I just got in touch with the real self. It's very difficult for me to put it in, more precise terms. I just suddenly felt, I felt like I touched something that seemed like a ball, absolutely whole, and what I've understood was I'm whole, perfect, and complete. I think I would just say I'm whole and perfect. Later I added this complete. I'm whole and perfect. That was the felt sense I had of coming in touch with that whatever it was, I mean, I don't even know whether it just felt like a ball, because I suppose we all feel a ball is as close to whole and perfection as we could get to. And immediately I realized that this faulty personality I was battling with, that seemed that had so many shortcomings, was all simply on the surface. And deep inside, I was whole and perfect. That actually, again, was a very remarkable insight for me. And I feel, my dear friends, that for all of us, it's a very remarkable insight, because most of us feel that this business of developing self-esteem is about making ourselves feel better at the cost of other people. It's about, doing some achievements and feeling that we are a lot better, and feeling, more confident because of our achievements, or because we've got good looks, or because of intelligence, or whatever. But this wholeness and perfection is innate in all of us. It is not dependent on any attribute, at all. And yeah, and it's not just my, I'm not the only one to be whole and perfect. Every single one of us is whole and perfect. So there's no way we can feel good about ourselves at the cost of other people, because all of us share what shall I say, that identity of being whole and perfect. So when I realized this, I understood that I don't have to go anywhere to become, to achieve self-esteem. All I have to do is to dismantle this faulty conditioned self. The journey was of undoing. It was not about doing. It was not about adding. It was about subtracting. So that actually really put me firmly on the path of self-esteem. It took me a very, 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 very long time to actually achieve self-esteem. The recognition of what self-esteem was didn't actually make me, achieve it over time. It's taken me very long. Even now, I'm not even sure whether I'm fully there or not. But certainly, I've reached, I've certainly made considerable lengths. And what I want to say is that many gurus I've found over time discount this whole business of self-esteem, because they, again, as I say, because they seem to think when someone talks about self-esteem, it's one of those trendy terms now, and it's really only about feeling like you're some Tarzan or something. But according to me, unless unless your ego is healthy, you cannot free yourself. If your ego is not healthy, if you're insecure, if you're unsure of yourself, if you feel threatened by life and others, then you will cling to your ego. You will not be able to let it go, because you will not be able to survive without it. The only way to free yourself of your ego is to what shall I say, heal it. And once your ego is healed and you achieve, and that is again only through dismantling your unconditional self, then the ego naturally falls, just like a ripe fruit naturally falls. So that actually is something I honestly feel I came to this, this planet Earth to learn the secret of self-esteem, maybe even to teach it. I don't know, but definitely to learn it, because I was so lacking in it. And I realized that self-esteem is so crucial. Your relationship with yourself will determine your relationship with everybody. Your relationship with yourself is not okay, your relationship with others cannot be okay. If you don't feel good about yourself, if you don't love yourself, you cannot love others. It's just not possible. It's not going to happen. Thanks, Ankur. Thanks for joining me. It's not going to happen. So self-esteem for me has been like the most, without self-esteem, my dear friends, it's as if, you're forever dropping into pits, forever dropping in. Your path is so unsure. Yeah, probably it's more like quicksand or something. Wherever you go, you suddenly find yourself dragged down, because there's nothing to keep you afloat. What keeps you afloat? What keeps you sturdy and stable? Perfect self-esteem, the knowledge that I'm whole and whole and perfect, the knowledge that I'm fine as I am, and that No, forgotten what I want to say. Anyway, so the knowledge that I'm perfect as I am is very crucial for us to be able to lead a happy, healthy life. Otherwise, an insecure ego will always look for ways to self-destruct. An insecure ego will always, will never ever be able to achieve the success it is capable of, because of the fact that it keeps doubting itself, because of the fact that it keeps, um, it looks for approval from other people rather than its own self. I can write a thesis on the ego because I've studied it pretty well over all these years of having an insecure ego. But the fact remains that I mean, for every single one of us who's struggling with, low self-esteem, there is no more satisfying journey than the journey of self-esteem. I hope and pray that every single one of you who feels that in some way or the other you could bolster your self-esteem will take this step. Honestly, it's not worth being unhappy when you can be happy. It's not worth not loving yourself when you can love yourself. Okay, so that for me was, lesson number 2, and it's definitely been another very, very, very massive and huge learning for me. Actually, I'm trying not to go in for very obvious truth, because I recognize that most of you are actually already very much on the path. You're serious and sincere seekers already. So I'm going to look at, insights, hopefully, that will interest all of you without being too evident. So the next one I'm going to talk about is look after life, or serve life, as I've called it in my book. Now, this was an insight that actually came out of the book itself. I was writing a chapter on women, and one of the questions I asked myself was that what does women's work consist of? Ask myself means I was asking it as I was writing it. What does women's work consist of? And then I answered that question. And I said it consists of, looking after children, old parents, and, running the household and taking care of family, and doing all these things. And then suddenly it hit me that all these various activities that I had summed up, actually, that I'd outlined, could actually be summed up in 2 lines: looking after life. Women look after lives. They're the custodians of life. That for me was an amazing discovery. And not that I didn't know it, but it just got crystallized when I, wrote about it, that women are the custodians of life. And I realized, no, so that I already knew, but what was fresh to me was, I realized what could be more important than looking after life. It's simply amazing that it should have taken me so long to pose this question to me and answer this question. But the ego does a very good job of, glossing over the important. The ego likes labels and money and blah, blah, and feeling important. And therefore it sidelines what is, because after all, who does, looking after life, gardeners look after life, ayahs look after life, cooks look after life. What is looking after life? Looking after life is serving life in a way that the overall, life force increases. So many people do it, and they're not highly educated. They're not gone to Harvard. They're not, they're not terribly rich. So why should it be important? That's how the ego looks at it. When I deeply inquired into it, I realized this life is what is it. Life on planet Earth consists of life and nothing else. And therefore our job has to be to look after life. And then, as a corollary, also recognized that our, what shall I say, our present way of life is profoundly self-negative. It is not life affirmative, it is life negative. Everything about it is going in the other direction of challenging and weakening the life force instead of augmenting it. So, I mean, among the many things is, of course, the excessive focus on economic progress at the cost of the environment, at the cost of society, human society, at the cost of individual peace and contentment also. We're running breakneck towards a higher and higher, a standard of material living, regardless of consequences. I don't need to tell you, or most of us are aware of this. And as a consequence, almost everything that we're doing is not life affirmative. Look at the jobs most of us hold, not life affirmative. The Buddha used to talk about the right livelihood, which is the right job. Very few of us have what is called the right livelihood just now. Because what are we doing? Many of us are in the corporate world. That's okay. But many of the products that they're marketing and creating are not essential to human happiness. And by selling them and focusing so much on marketing them and increasing their productivity and profits year in and year out, they are also creating tremendous havoc on planet Earth. Okay, and manufacturers of liquor, cigarettes. I mean, almost everybody, even processed food for that matter, they're not working in the interests of society. Their work is essentially life negative. Now, if there are any corporate guys out there, I'm terribly sorry, but please examine. This is so. And for me, this whole discovery was like amazing. It made me really, what shall I say, look at society through a different perspective, which is that from my perspective, gardeners, ayahs, cooks, anybody, artists, anybody who's actually doing something to augment the life force of this world, they're the heroes. They're the great ones. They're the, what shall I say, the successful ones. They're the ones who are keeping life going, and the rest, no matter how many crores they may be earning, and now these days everybody seems to be earning in crores, no matter how many crores they may be earning, no matter how big a car they're driving in, or if not a car, then possibly a helicopter and maybe yachts, no matter all of that stuff, their contribution to planet Earth and to life itself has been one of, lessening. It has lessened planet Earth. It has not increased planet Earth. So I would say, let's take a deep look at ourselves. What is the kind of work we're doing? If we have helped even one person become a better human being, if we have supported even one person to help their life become easier, I think we just justified in having got this human birth. So we need to look at ourselves and really see, am I living rightly? Is what I'm doing supporting life, or is what I'm doing negating life? That's something every human being, particularly in today's times, when we're right now in very loaded times, as I'm sure, the School of Ancient Wisdom folks recognize, and I suppose most of us do, there's definitely a movement towards the spiritual age. We're moving towards a larger and more beautiful way of life. But at the same time, the negative forces are so strong. And it's still a toss-up. Are we getting there or are we not getting there? Is planet Earth going to survive, or is planet Earth going to self-destruct? It's still a toss-up. So when that's happening, it's a good thing to pose these questions and ask yourself whether you could possibly, do something to increase the life on planet Earth. So that's my third lesson. The fourth is focus on what is permanent. Now, this, I'm sure many of you have already sort of recognized this for yourself, but in any case, this was again a good insight for me to have. It certainly helped me. What shall I say? It certainly helped me to focus my life in a more, what shall I say? In a more well, I've lost that word, but anyway, you know what I mean, to become more focused about how to live my life. So what does it mean focusing on what is permanent? Now, my dear friends, most of us who are on the spiritual path or moved recognize that we are not the mortal body, that we are actually the immortal soul. We're actually immortal, immortal. And for an immortal person, if we are immortal, then we really need to focus on what is permanent. When I say permanent, I mean goes beyond death. Because if we are immortal and we focus only on what leaves us at death, then have we really, lived the life we are meant to live? Have we really achieved the purpose for which we've come to planet Earth? Most of us are so distracted by the needs and calls of the body, feeding the body, clothing the body, pandering to the body's needs and desires, housing the body. It's a non-stop occupation. Most of our lives go on just looking after this body of us, but this body and all that comes with it will leave us. So then what is the use? What can we take? Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much. What can we take with us? I mean, what is it that we are guaranteed to take with us beyond death? So, I mean, from all that I've read and all that I've understood, there are only two things. One is relationships, because we are not the only immortal. I'm not the only immortal soul. Everybody, all of us are. So therefore, whatever relationships we have is bound to continue in the next life, and so on and so forth. So we need to work on our relationships. Okay. The other thing that we need to work on is ourselves. Now, because that is the other thing we take with us. Apart from the soul, we also take our psyche with us, our mind, or whatever it is. I may not be absolutely accurate in this, but as I understand, our psyche, or the accumulation of the person we are, we take that also along with us. So these are the only two things we carry away with us: relationships and the psyche. And these are the two things we need to focus on. Now, how do we focus on the psyche? I would earlier have said by growing, by focusing on personal growth, by becoming a better person every day. But today I would rather prefer to say by deconditioning ourselves, by walking that path of subtracting, the false self, eliminating the false self, allowing the real self, which is whole and perfect, which needs nothing to be whole and perfect, allowing the real self to pop out a little more with every lifetime. It's not easy. It's a journey of many lifetimes, but a little more every lifetime. And really, maybe we can even still say grow, because it's a paradoxical journey, the spirituality. It's only when you feel, that your self-esteem is better, and you've healed all your wounds, and you've freed yourself of your fears, that you really can get to a space. So in a way, I think it's all right to say personal growth, because yes, that's part of the journey as well. But the ultimate effect it has is that at some point, some blessed lifetime or the other, you will find yourself actually dismantling your ego and just allowing that whole perfect, radiant self to shine forth. So that is one of our, I would say that is ours paramount purpose for living, to achieve this. With every life, we work on ourselves. With every life, we move a little closer to our ultimate purpose of enlightenment. So that's one. You cannot do it without relationships. All of us know that relationships are among the most challenging aspects of human life. It isn't for nothing that Jean-Paul Sartre said, the other is hell. Relationships hold the secrets of our happiness and our misery. Okay, so working on our relationships is also something absolutely crucial to this job of awakening, of becoming a better human being. So we need to, first of all, so whatever the relationship, some relationships we don't need to work on at all, because they're absolutely marvelous as they stand. But there are many other relationships, and usually these relationships are within our own loved ones, which are very challenging. Why is this so? It is so because we take birth very often in the same family, life after life, because there's so much of unfinished business, so much of unfinished karma to settle. So because of that, there is a lot of emotional charge in many relationships. And that again is one of our primary things we need to work on. Healing these relationships, recognizing that if I don't heal these relationships in this lifetime, if I allow these relationships to continue to accumulate negative baggage, then in my next lifetime, it's going to be an even more difficult journey. And steadfastly working on each relationship until we have healed the relationship and ourselves to some extent. The baggage, or to put it in a clearer way, the karma that we owe our parents is the biggest of all. And our job, because our job in every lifetime is to complete as much karma as possible, so that our baggage is less and less and less and less. So our job in every lifetime is to attempt. I don't know how. We'll never always be successful, but always to attempt to repay our parents for all that they've done for us, for giving us life, for looking after us, during the most helpless periods of our existence, for loving us. Honestly, most of us will agree that the love of a parent is probably the only unconditional love you can experience on planet Earth. So these are the things we need to really work on. And the more we can heal our relationships, and the more our relationships thrive, and the more we work on ourselves and heal some of the wounds, free ourselves of some of the fears, we will slowly be achieving whatever we are meant to achieve, which is enlightenment. So that's lesson number 4, I think. Yeah. The 5th is we live in an ethical universe. Many of us obviously believe that that there is nothing ethical about life, because we see so much of wrongdoing flourish. And yet, the universe is immensely ethical. Now, one of the most obvious ways of this happening is, of course, this concept of karma. And many of you, I'm sure most of you are already familiar with it, which is that every thought, word, and action has a consequence. And this consequence is either negative or positive. So we either earn negative karma or positive karma. And in fact, it is this karma that keeps us embedded in the cycle of life and death. And our whole purpose is to free ourselves of karma, so that we can no longer need to and free ourselves of karma and attain enlightenment, so that we no longer need to come back to planet. So that is one way that we know that the universe is ethical. Now, many of us choose not to believe in karma, because we feel, because it's not, the consequence, the consequence of every action is not immediately visible to all of us, because some actions can be so difficult that it takes some lifetimes for us to earn, the space with which to void this karma. For instance, correct me if I'm wrong, my hold on Indian mythology is not the best, but Yudhishthir apparently killed the 100 cygnets, not Yudhishthir, Dhritarashtra, sorry, 100 cygnets of a swan. And took him many lifetimes to earn the merit to have 100 children, so that these 100 children could be killed, and the karma of killing those the baby swans was filled. So this has a complex, karma is an extremely complex subject, and because we don't see this, because we see the goons and the politicians and all of them thriving in the here and now, we believe that there is really no agency of good. There is no agency for law and order in the universe, and our own human agency is all too faulty. So many of us actually tend to get very cynical about it, but honestly, no. Karma is absolutely for perfect justice. May not happen in this lifetime, but surely it will happen in another lifetime. But interestingly enough, we start paying the price for any unethical behavior right the very minute we depart from the right path. The first thing, for instance, now I have a weakness for food. So very often I eat the wrong food. And I know that the minute I've eaten the wrong food, I start feeling uncomfortable within myself. I feel guilty. I feel bad. I ask myself, why did I do this? And it goes on like that. So that itself is suffering. That itself is a kind of a small punishment. It depends on what we do. A punishment for the wrongdoing that we've done. And if you continue to look at it, you'll find that the minute you depart from the right path of rightness and morality, you will find that your nature becomes more gross. You will not be so conscious of what is right. Your conscience itself dulls down, and when all these things happen, you'll find yourself vibrating at a very gross level. And when we vibrate at a gross level, actually speaking, we can no longer even feel the presence of God. Now, when many of us do this, when we start going down the path of righteousness, we feel that God has left us. Actually, God has not left us. God is always has the same role, place in our lives, always, but we move away from God. And when we move away from God, then we are not able to, the space between us widens, and then we are not able to experience the presence of God as powerfully as we were able to do when we were leading an extremely, what shall I say? Right, I mean, I don't want to be self-righteous about it, but a good life, when we were leading a good life. And the more we move away from, God, we deprive ourselves of the graces, the grace of God that all of us, the grace of God that all of us, many of us experience tangibly. I mean, many seekers, when they start moving along the path, they recognize how well they're looked after, how well almost they're guided. It's as if somebody somewhere is moving you, and and whatever you're looking for, as I said earlier, also comes to you. And you just find yourself taking one step at a time, and the door opening, and you feel as if you're no longer just dangling, in an uncertain way, but you're going into some preset path that you are, able to walk on. And then you also realize that you're not alone, that there is this whole force behind you. You may not be able to recognize who or what this force is because it's an invisible force, but you feel supported, guided, loved, and cared for. Well, the minute you leave this path, you will not experience this, And then the many tender, what shall I say, attentions, that sometimes God showers on all of us if we are karmically entitled, that stops. So many beautiful little things happen to us, Sometimes you wish that, oh, I wish, that I could go for a movie or something like that. And somebody will call you and say, hey, I've got a spare ticket, please join. How many of us have, had this? We utter a stray wish and then it actually happens. It's as if, well, the universe or God, or I'm fond of using the word God. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm not going to put it down simply because it's not in fashion anymore. So the universe or whatever really wants to pamper you if you're karmically entitled for it. Okay, all this is not going to happen if you leave the path. Another thing is that you will also find that, one second, let me just check my notes. Yeah, we also lose access to positive feelings like joy, love, gratitude, peace, and all that. And definitely the higher ranks of evolution will be denied to us. The evolution or moving forward on the spiritual path is only the reward for the guileless and the good. You will, no matter how much how wealthy you are, how influential you are, how smart you are. These things are not going to make you any more enlightened than anyone else. You have to become a better human being. You have to free yourself of whatever it is that's pulling you down, and only then will you be entitled to further growth. So all these, according to me, are really massive setbacks. So let's not ever think that people get away in any way, uh, by doing whatever it is that they do to to benefit themselves in some way or the other. It's not there. The universe is entirely ethical, and we pay the price for every wrongdoing the minute we actually do it. Okay, so I think that should please all of us who feel that I'm being good, but I'm not what shall I say, rewarded for it, and somebody else is doing such a terrible thing, and still he or she is being rewarded for it. Not so. And don't look at the material side of it. That is not where joy lies. The real rewards in life are not material at all, and that is where you'll get your rewards from. Yeah. Lesson number 6 is, okay, so now it's 7:30. Sajani, how much longer do I have?
We go on up to 8, but before that, we have a Q&A.
So should I, when should I stop then, Sajani?
Whenever you feel like. Okay, we so can extend it a bit.
Yeah, maybe in another 10 minutes.
Okay, right.
Is that okay?
And then because we'll open it up, there'll be a lot of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Maybe then we can stop right off also.
No. You just wind it up.
So maybe I'll just speak, look at one more lesson, and then we can throw it open to it. Okay, so the 6th lesson is do the right thing. Now, how this happened to me was actually through the agency of one of the biggest miracles that I've ever experienced, which was that, in my 5th year of being part of Life Positive, I really understood that, that was the year, it was 1995, that was the year when this whole globalization and satellite revolution and all of that was absolutely it had just entered India, and it was really thriving. And being editor of Life Positive of Society magazine was like really seeing it from the ringside view kind of thing. All these brands coming in and exploding, and people going berserk and everything. And to my horror, I was quite an enthusiastic supporter of this whole privatization and capitalism. But to my horror, one fine day, I just realized that this is not in the best interest of mankind, because if we're going to continue to grow and grow, if capitalism's main thing is, to keep growing non-stop, non-stop growth in a finite planet is not conceivable. So it hit me like a ton of bricks, and completely knocked me off my perch. I totally, from being a, what shall I say, reasonable advocate of capitalism, I became a, critic of it. And I started looking for answers. What is to happen? Anyway, the answers took some time, but eventually they did. And I realized that as editor of Life Positive, I was promoting capitalism, and I no longer wanted to do that. So I spoke to my publisher about it. He's a wonderful human being, absolutely the most supportive publisher one could have. And he encouraged me actually to start a magazine of my own in the group. Unfortunately, that magazine didn't go very far, and in 6 months' time, it was pulled out. The magazine actually didn't even see the light of day. But in 6 months' time, we had to stop working on it because the advertisers felt there was absolutely no potential for it. So when I was told that, I then had to decide what is my next step, And by then I had already realized all of mainstream media was completely had got into this whole capitalism thing. And the only philosophy that was actually being promoted right, left, and center was the philosophy of, unabashed capitalism, which I no longer wanted to be part of. So my inner voice actually guides me by showing me possibilities. And I suddenly thought of freelancing instead of working in a organization. And that, surprisingly enough, filled me with a whole lot of, possibilities. And I knew more than anyone else, being a veteran in the field, that freelancing was really a very uncertain field. Hardly anybody paid you. Even if you wrote, they still would not pay you. But that was what it was. I suddenly was filled with it. So I went up to my publisher, put in my papers. And then, of course, fear struck me because I had to look after my mother. And obviously, I needed to look after myself as well. And I had no job in hand. I was not even planning to take a job in hand. So I went home and, at about 8:39, I think, and gingerly broke it to my mother that I was now officially, out of a job. And my mother, I remember, was so startled because she was definitely old school and couldn't even imagine people throwing up jobs. And then the phone rang, and Parveen Chopra, was on the line. Now, Parveen Chopra later went on to become the editor of Life Positive. But when he called me, I mean, how I knew him was 4 months earlier, he was writing a book on the New Age movement in India, and he'd come to interview me because he'd heard about the magazine I was coming out. So after that, we were not in touch at all. And suddenly, out of the blue, Parveen calls up and said he's starting a magazine, a Body, Mind, Spirit magazine, a spiritual magazine. And he was looking for someone in Bombay. So I all but, yelled. I said, Parveen, please take me on. I need a job. And that's how, it happened that I joined Life Positive. For me, it was an amazing miracle because I felt that even I was, I didn't have to worry even for a night. That very day, I literally, as if the universe, spread out its arms and picked me up as I jumped out from this job. So I understood from that if you do the right thing at the right time for the right reason, you're looked after. And I felt that, yes, that is what I had done because I hadn't left prematurely. I struggled and struggled with all my, my, what shall I say, ethical dilemmas of not not identifying with the work I was doing in society or the conflict I was facing between my values and the work I was doing. I didn't leave it. I didn't collapse. I struggled to answer it. And only when I found my answers did I leave. And I also was leaving for the right reason, not for any other reason, but that because I did not want to identify or support this particular philosophy and everything else. So for the right reason, the right time, and the right thing. All three I discovered are very important. Certain people who do the right thing, but they'll do it prematurely when they're not ready for it. And then the universe doesn't feel obliged to look after you, So once I realized this, I strove thereafter to align myself to the time cycles of the universe. So there were relationships that I was acutely uncomfortable in, but I never actually what shall I say? I never cut them, nor did I pull myself away from them. I worked my way through them until at some point the relationship organically dissolved. And I worked with Life Positive for 21 years. I think anyone who's worked for a long period of time in any organization will say there are definitely ups and downs. It was so with Life Positive, but I hung on because I knew that I must not leave until my time is come. And then when I actually did leave in May 2017, it was with the clear knowledge that my time had come. And therefore, it was very easy for me to give up the job. So like that with everything else. I had been wanting to be a facilitator for 20 years, but I knew that the time had not come. I was not ready. I had to keep working on myself. And then in October 2014, I kind of felt within myself that, yes, I'm ready. And therefore, in March 2015, I actually started my journey as a facilitator of the Zen of Good Writing workshop. So in every way, I do strive to do the right thing as much as I can. I mean, I'm not a saint. I certainly I'm much better at doing bigger things than smaller things, things. In personal life, I'm not so good at it. I strive for it, but I've not yet reached that space of total self-control. But in the bigger things, the things that will determine my life, I strive to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. And that has really, I would say, helped me to make decisions that have worked for me. Every one of these decisions was the right decision for me. And, it benefited me hugely. And I felt that I was on this ongoing path of growth. So my dear friends, I'll stop at this and open up the space for all of you to ask me some questions if you'd like to.
Thank you so much, Suma. It was really wonderful, the sharing of lessons from your life. As a matter of fact, I'd like to buy the book and read all the remaining life lessons.
I'd be so happy if you did. My dear friends, this is the book.
Yes.
50 life lessons. And
right.
It's available on Amazon.
Amazon.
And I should imagine it's also available in bookshops these days.
Right. So I'm definitely going to read it. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. And now we will open it up for the Q&A. Any questions? Kindly unmute and ask your question. Any questions?
I have a question, Sajani.
Yes. Ramesh, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very nice, your talk. One thing that piqued my curiosity was when you said that there was a point at which you were de-enrolled by the magic veil that capitalism, spins, and that kind of seduces us all into that way of life, because India has been for the past 300 years in years of intense poverty, and the Western industrial world seemed to be the way forward. But we all know better now. And in fact, we've been exposed to this thought earlier as well. It was by Amir Khan's uncle.
I know him. Yes.
Yes, he had actually even spoken about this at IIMs, etc. Now, it is very obvious that in the
But I didn't know him, and this is I think an insight that emerged for me from within. I didn't know him when I actually understood.
Yes, in fact, he came to our satsang when Mamanise was there, and he had spoken about this, and he had been written about this. He follows that line.
Written a book, yeah.
So my question is, I definitely also subscribe to this thought that it's very obvious we can't, infinitely keep growing an economy. So what is the more workable ideal for you? How do you mix this capitalism, or what is the ideal path rather?
Actually, again, that's something I thought about quite a bit. And according to me, and it's not going to happen now because it requires the human being to evolve a bit. But according to me, the future path, the economy or the economic way could follow is to pursue the ends of communism, which is human welfare, using the means of capitalism, free enterprise. So we use the mean through free enterprise we focus, instead of profit, we focus on human welfare and create the products or create whatever it is that we want to create that would benefit human beings rather than only our pockets. This is something I'm rather what shall I say? I'm rather focused on this. This is something that matters a lot to me, and I sincerely hope and pray that humankind will move into this space sooner or later.
So something like what Bhutan is doing, is it? Using gross domestic happiness as the
absolutely. And I'm a Gandhian. I'm an ardent Gandhian, and I honestly believe Gandhiji has all the answers. Small is beautiful, as Schumacher has written, and Gandhiji totally advocated. I think it's a huge mistake to pursue big, as we've been doing. Big is always a function of ego, and I'm all in favor of small local economies becoming getting together and forming a larger circle, and then they form a larger circle. So these increasing concentric circles, which has certain harmony between each border, I feel that's the way to go. As far, I mean, I'm not the most knowledgeable about this, but instinctively I feel that this is the way.
Yeah, so just to close what I'm saying, going by what you said, seems to actually match the ancient way in which Bharat was looked after before, where people would choose based on ethics their local leaders, and it was always about being in harmony with nature. Whatever is being done, it's always in
Absolutely.
harmony.
Yeah.
And
I
only
mean, really, this country, this civilization has always abided by a holistic way of life. And, you know,
yes.
it used nature as its role model in the way it designed itself. And it willingly, you know, allowed nature to be its not just protector, but its guide. And you know, as you say, it always aligned itself to the welfare of nature. We don't need to look beyond our own country to,
Yes.
you know, get the answers.
Thank you, Ji.
Thanks, Ramesh. That was very interesting. Yes, Tapasya.
I am Janaki Ram. I have two clarifications.
Yes, yes.
First one is you have been in the media for a long time.
Right.
But some people say that it is better to keep away from media and the newspaper and TV. And if you really want to focus, as you said, on spirituality, because there's so much negativity all the time attacking us, if I can say so.
Certainly. Certainly.
So, what is your experience, or what is the lesson you will say?
You know, that's the reason why I left mainstream media. The minute I realized that I was actually contributing to creating more greed and more upward mobility, I decided I'm not going to, you know, not going to do this anymore. And I decided to leave mainstream media. And thereafter, the magazine I later joined, Life Positive, its major agenda was to write on the positive and ignore the negative. Very proud of the magazine, very proud of having worked for it. And in all those 21 years, and it continues to exist and it continues to abide by this philosophy. Even, you know, even gurus who did the wrong thing, we said, just ignore them. You don't want to, why bring attention to the negative? Because whatever you bring attention to will grow. So therefore, if you don't like a book, don't talk about it. Unfortunately, you see, the egoistic reviewers want to tear a book to bits if they don't like it. But in the process, they're drawing attention to what should not be drawn attention to. Any book that's really bad or mediocre should die a quiet death. Anything, any activity that's not in the interest of society should be ignored. I know what I'm saying is radical, and media people would probably jump at my throat. But honestly, this is the spiritual law, that what you put attention to grows. And therefore, media with its non-stop focus on negativity is actually, making negativity more and more prolific, as we all recognize. You know? So slowly, I think society is changing there. The media is also changing there. Certain newspapers and magazines are beginning to recognize the importance of positive news, because I guess everyone is absolutely up to their teeth with negative news, which, you know, just pulls down society. It creates more fear and insecurity. It's really not in anybody's interest to have a media that is focused only on negative news for the sole purpose of lining its pockets. The only reason why the media focuses on negative news is because of the well-known saying, bad news sells. So because of, you know, they need to sell, society is suffering. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you very much. It really helped me. And can you tell us something more about this Zen of Good Writing course, and what is the duration, or what does it involve? And people should be fairly good in writing before joining Zen of Good Writing.
Actually, Janki Ram, my reason for starting this workshop is one or two things. One is that suddenly, you know, social media opened up, and I realized that finally the common man, the ordinary person, also had a chance, opportunity to impact the public domain, which earlier was restricted only to media and, you know, copywriters and writers and so on and so forth. So I, by virtue of having worked in the media for 40 years, I had a certain amount of, what shall I say, experience and knowledge about what good writing was all about. And I thought I might share it with people who have not had access to, who have not been professional writers and who could benefit from this. So that's the reason why I really started this workshop. And therefore, this workshop is open to anybody who, I do maintain that at least one's grammar should be good, reasonably good, otherwise it'll be difficult for you to move forward. But it's not an absolute rule, because over time I also feel even without good grammar, if you write, if your thoughts are sparkling and unique, then you can still get by. But so it's basically an open field. Anyone is free to join. And the workshop really aspires to make you a better writer than you were before. It puts you in touch with the principles of good writing, how to write and so on. But also it really supports the writer in working on themselves and freeing themselves of their fears, because that's what holds many of us back and, builds up their confidence.
So what's a kind of minimum time duration one has to
So
do
it's
this?
in the offline zone arena. It was actually only a one-day workshop followed by a month of mentorship. Now,
Okay.
because it was actually an 8-hour workshop. Now it's a 9-hour workshop because I've expanded the editing bit, and it's a 2-day thing, 4.5 hours per day. And the
And then
mentorship.
mentorship. Okay. Yeah, because it's a skill to be developed.
Exactly. So, one day or 2 days,
Yeah.
but 1 month of support would definitely help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Tapasya, please.
The
Yeah,
questions?
good evening, ma'am. Thank you for having me today. Ma'am, my question is, when do you know the right time has come? Because when you mentioned, like in 2017, you decided like it's time for you. So from what space it comes from? Does it come from the space of happiness, or it comes from a space of sadness, frustration? I mean, I need to understand.
Yeah, sure. One thing I made up my mind very well, very early in life, Tapasya, is that I would not take any major emotional decisions. Small ones, yes, umpteen times, but major emotional decisions that would determine my happiness and, way of life, I would not take. So that's one of the things that helped me, kept me very steadfast to the job, for instance. But usually for me, it's an inner knowing, Tapasya. I just know, like I knew when the time had come to leave that positive. I knew that I'm done with it. My contribution to it is over, and it's time for someone else to take over and move it forward. So it was that inner knowing. It's the inner knowing that really, even knowing
calling,
that I was ready for, moving into facilitatorship was again an inner knowing when I felt like complete. I felt confident in myself that I could speak to the public without, shyness or self-doubt and all that kind of stuff. So these things come to me, and I suppose it comes to many of us. It's basically, I think, ensuring that your intuition is functioning and abiding by its nudges.
Okay, so it's not external, it's internal. Yeah.
External doesn't really.
Okay.
Only the internal stuff.
Thank you.
Excuse me, this is hello. This is Professor Balasubramanian from Hyderabad.
Hello, Professor.
The way you have put many things, the way you have transformed yourself at the beginning in lesson number 1 and all that, it was highly inspiring. And whatever you have told in the other 5 lessons or whatever, they are also extremely very very appealing to us. And we really concur with you in many of these things because of our experience. I'm also 75 years old. So it is like that. But 1 or 2 things which I wanted to just find out from you is, see, individually anyway, each one of us, as whatever you have told, I think they are extremely appealing. And then, we have to go ahead and, do like that. I think that is a very good path for progress. But when it comes to a whole nation or whatever it is, then we have to think of the progress of, and especially a country like India, where we have a lot of poverty and other things also. So I can understand anyway that we have to, and the science is also progressing so much. New technologies are coming. Some of them may not be really very good for real progress of people, but many of them are good also. So whichever is good, and we have to adopt them. And then, so individuals anyway will have to be, going on, following many of these things and become better and better themselves. But when it comes to a whole progress of the, country or as a globe, your concerns about environment and those things are also, well taken. So there is absolutely, whatever we do, it should have those bearings. But for a government to function properly and take things in the proper direction, and it appears from in India. See, we have seen a lot of public sector undertakings only, doing things before, and then we have now many capitalists also, and these small scale industries and entrepreneurs. All these people have come up, and then they are all doing a very nice job, and then we are improving our economy also, and we are globally anyway also doing indigenously anyway. We want to improve things,
Right.
so that way it's a
something.
combination. It's a combination of some private industries plus the public sector undertakings, and everybody
So I'll just interrupt you if I may.
Yeah.
Basically, I would say that this is individual awakening. I don't think we're going to anymore see these, and rather I don't think it's worthwhile anymore to have change that comes from outside. This overall change like communism, where a whole way of life is a whole economic philosophy was imposed, or even the way the government functions, which is change is imposed. I believe that as we move further, and I definitely see that society is evolving, that every human being will, at some point decide to move in this direction, that, hey, and it's every human being, it can't be imposed. It'll come from pure free will, that I'm not going to chase money anymore. I'm going to do something that will serve society, that will enable me to earn a living, but my purpose is not profit anymore. My purpose is human welfare. So as more and more people start moving in this direction, and more people start doing this kind of work guided by their own conscience and higher self, we will see that that systems also will start changing and supporting. This, I believe, is what is going to happen. I could be wrong, but I do feel this very strongly, that as more and more individuals evolve, we'll finally see that systems also then start changing, and at some point, whatever, a whole new organic system will happen. Economic system will happen. Yes, admin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Anyone?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Which of us has to speak?
Anuja also has a question.
Oh, okay. Let Anuja go first. Yeah.
Hi, Anuja.
Hi, Suma. I actually don't have a question. I just have a whole lot of appreciation because, before they give you an official vote of thanks, I wanted to thank you for a really honest and very clear set of lessons. You were really honest about your life and shared with us things that are obviously deeply personal. And I think that's what really has touched me. And I think what I've taken away from your life lessons, and tell me if this resonates with you, is three things. One is that you should trust the universe and its processes. And you should have patience, because that's something I really feel has come in your life. You've really been patient and not jumped into things or run out of things in a hurry. You've given it, as you said, due time. And the third thing is, while you're doing this, to just have ethical self-reflection. So for me, that's really like what I'm going to take away from your talk and your books. I've had the privilege of knowing Suma for so many years, and I'm much the richer for it. So thank you, Suma. It was just something I wanted to share with.
Beautiful, Anuja. Thank you so much. And I can't tell you what you mean to me. So happy that we've reconnected.
I'm so glad that I was able to connect you with the School of Ancient Wisdom, which I've been associated with for so long. And it's a wonderful place, and hope to have you here someday.
I hope so. Next year, hopefully, I should be starting my travels.
Yeah, great. So I'll leave that to Sajani and Ramesh and everyone to work out, and we'll hope to welcome you in person now.
Wow, that sounds good. It was one of we wrote about the School of Ancient Wisdom, and it was always one of my goals to come to the School of Ancient Wisdom. It somehow didn't happen. Hope it will fructify sooner or later.
But the universe has answered you now.
Yeah, looks like it.
Thank you, Anuja, so much for introducing her to the school and me. Thank you so much, Anuja. It's thanks to Anuja that Suma Varghese is here with us today.
No, it's just the universe. I'm a medium, happy medium.
Yeah. Can I speak? I'm Aditi.
Yes.
Hi, Aditi. I didn't recognize you. Hi.
Oh,
and you've gone and called yourself admin's iPad. So I was wondering.
Yeah, I have to change that. But yes, Suma and I have had very long associations, almost 30 years now.
Aditi used to work with me in Society Max.
Yes. And I live in Bangalore. So if you're coming to the Ancient School of Wisdom, I am here, with you.
Certainly.
The universe may the universe bring you here. And we're all the happier for it. And really, thank you for this wonderful book and your insight. Through my life, it's not just now, through my life, I have learned and calmed down, and you've been there always for me. And I have not bought your book. I'm sorry for that. But today I am not only buying it for myself, but I'm going to gift it to people I think need it,
Wow,
close people. I really feel this is a gift, so it should be shared, Thank you so much for being in my life.
Thank you so much. Love you and very happy to have you in my life.
One thing I wanted to say is, when all of this, moving away from capitalism and all, I think it all starts with contentment, within yourself, I think that's what you have always advocated. Start calming down and be content with whatever there is and whatever it is. And I think life will work itself out for you. It has. It's a natural process.
Yes, my dear. It is a natural process. It also takes time, but it's a short work.
Yes. Thank you so much. So I'm so happy I joined this.
I'm so happy.
Thank you, Sajani, and thank you, Anuja, for this.
And we look forward to seeing you at the school or probably talking one Thursday.
Definitely. Absolutely. Always happy and always.